actually, Dylan called me, who's Kurt's best friend, Dylan Carlson, and said, Courtney's looking, it was more like, Courtney's looking for a drummer. It was my birthday, my 25th birthday. So it was in April, and it was super hot. And we set up my drums at Jabberjaw, which is a club on Pico. Courtney didn't show up till like midnight, and Kurt showed up with her. And so it was immediately like, how have you been? What's been going on? That sort of catching up thing. And they were living in an apartment on Spalding, and I was gonna stay with them that night. And so we tried out different songs, and we played like an old Wipers song.
I was in high school in the early 90s just as alternative, grunge, and gangster rap were hitting, which I feel is one of the most exciting periods of music since the late 60s. One of my favorite bands was Nirvana, led by Kurt Cobain, which led me to another band I admired and eventually stopped admiring, Hole, which was fronted by Cobain's wife, Courtney Love. Hole had the best female drummer I'd ever seen in Patti Schemel, and the documentary Hit So Hard tells Schemel's story using nearly 40 hours of home video footage she shot herself, which not only provides an insider's look into the grunge explosion and two of its most important figures, but also an intimate, sometimes heart-wrenching portrait of Schemel as a drummer, a lesbian, an addict, a rock star, and ultimately a survivor. Hit So Hard starts with Schemel's close friendship with Cobain and Love, evidenced by the amazingly sweet and tender footage Schemel filmed of them with their new baby, showing Cobain to be much sillier and more fun than the lazy media portrayal of him as the tortured voice of a generation. And a scene where Love is working out a new song and Cobain joins in with backing vocals gave me the same thrill I remember from high school of getting my hands on a rare demo. This makes it all the more devastating as Schemel recounts Cobain's suicide and the effect it had on the world and the tight-knit Seattle music community, just 4 days before the release of Hole's acclaimed second album, Live Through This, the first with Schemel as drummer. Cobain's death was followed just 2 months later by the fatal overdose of Hole's bassist, Kristen Pfaff, highlighting the darkness that was always at the heart of the Seattle sound, as well as the instability that's always dogged Hole. The film then jumps back to explore Schemel's teenage years in Marysville, Washington, where she went through the difficult experience of coming out in a small town, but found salvation with other outsiders in the punk scene, where she took up the drums partially as an act of defiance since so few women played them. The film also details the life of a drummer, playing in various bands, living on the road, and as the band's timekeeper, being responsible for anchoring the songs and keeping shows on track. While Hit So Hard often feels scattered and a bit like an overambitious student project, Schemel's struggles with addiction provide the through line, starting as a child when she had her first drink at 13. Despite numerous trips to rehab, drug and alcohol addiction haunted her life, from the customary pre- and post-show partying to increasingly desperate drinking and drug use in hotel rooms around the world, to an unfathomable low on the streets of Los Angeles. Hit So Hard uses interviews with Schemel's mother and brother, friends, her bandmates Eric Erlandson and Melissa Oftemar, and fellow musicians who are both peers and unabashed admirers. But Courtney Love comes out the worst by far, not just for her makeup that makes her look like a hungover circus clown, but from her selfish perspective that Hole is solely her band, her time wasting and self-aggrandizing stage antics, and her failure to acknowledge or even recognize the effects her actions have on others, including the decision that sent Schemel into her deepest and most dangerous period of addiction. But Hit So Hard is obviously Schemel's story, and despite the film's labored attempts to create a coherent structure, Schemel's unwavering frankness about her addictions, which is never self-pitying, is utterly compelling, as is her take on being a woman, a lesbian, and a drummer in a volatile, world-famous band at the forefront of a cresting movement. Fans of rock, drummers, women in rock, Hole, and the grunge wave of the early mid-90s will definitely want to check out Hit So Hard. But as a film that's ultimately about overcoming obstacles and surviving the battles with your demons, there's plenty of inspiration for everyone. I'm Jonathan Kim, and this is a ReThink Review.